For centuries, certain texts have been erased from history, documents that contain forbidden secrets, hidden from public view. Among these lost records, there was a prophecy, an enigmatic message written in a remote time that, according to some evidence, described future events with terrifying accuracy. For a long time, this revelation was discredited, treated as a myth, a tale of no significance. But now, fragments of this ancient warning have begun to resurface, bringing with them disturbing signs that everything may be coming true. If what is described in this document is real, then humanity has already crossed a point of no return, and the fate that awaits us was sealed long ago. But who tried to hide this prophecy? And above all, what is the true message it carries? Welcome to another night, where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube deliver the videos to more people and allowing me to continue bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. There are secrets that have been buried so deeply that almost no one remembers they ever existed. But what if I told you that one of these secrets is an ancient prophecy recorded centuries ago that simply vanished from history? There are no known copies, few have had access to it, and those who mentioned its existence were silenced. What was in this message that warranted so much effort to erase it? The first sign of this lost document appeared in letters from the 16th century, where scholars of the time spoke of something called the Propheticus Ultimi, or, in literal translation, the final prophecies. That name alone says a lot, but the strangest part is that no one knows exactly who wrote this text. Some theories suggest it was a visionary monk, a renegade scholar, or even a secret group that attempted to record something that was not meant to be revealed. But what did this document say that was so grave? Accounts indicate that it described an inevitable cycle, the rise and fall of empires, events that would change humanity forever, and most frightening of all, a warning about a point of no return. If this prophecy was correct, we would be living that decisive moment right now, without even realizing it. What reinforces the idea that this document was dangerous is the effort made to make it disappear. In 1782, a group of researchers who had access to forbidden archives of the Vatican Library found references to a prohibited text. Shortly afterward, all this documentation was erased, and those involved were removed without explanation. Coincidence? Or an attempt to hide something that was never meant to come to light? But there is something even more intriguing. Before this document disappeared from history, some fragments of it were translated, and what was written was, at the very least, disturbing. Some passages spoke of machines that speak and control the world. Could this be a prediction about artificial intelligence? Another passage mentioned an invisible network that connects all of humanity. The internet. How could someone from centuries ago describe something like this with such precision? This raises an intriguing question. Did this text truly predict the future? Or was it merely recording ancient knowledge that had been passed down through generations? Some secret societies may have had access to information that the rest of the world never knew. Perhaps that's why the document was fragmented, hidden within other, less obvious texts. And when we look at certain ancient writings, we find suspicious connections. The Tiburtine Sibyl manuscript, for example, describes a great empire collapsing due to its own arrogance. This has happened multiple times throughout history, and is happening again. The Dead Sea Scrolls speak of a final war before the dawn of a new era. Could these be parts of the same warning, scattered throughout time, so that no one would perceive the complete truth? But the most chilling passage from this lost document spoke of the great illusion that will keep the world asleep until it is too late. What does that mean? Are we being kept occupied, distracted, while something much greater unfolds before our eyes? If this prophecy is real, the signs may be all around us, but always presented as mere coincidences. Political changes, economic crises, uncontrolled technological revolutions. Could all of this be part of an inevitable cycle that was predicted centuries ago? And if this prophecy truly comes to pass, what comes next? What happens when the final warning is ignored? The few researchers who have tried to find the manuscript have had their work interrupted. Records have disappeared, sources have gone silent. If this story were nothing more than a myth, why so much effort to ensure that no one gets close to the truth? Humanity may have already crossed the point of no return. The question is there anything we can do, or are we merely watching the inevitable unfold before our eyes? When a document disappears from history, there is usually a reason. But the strangest thing is that even though it has never been found, the predictions contained in this prophecy seem to have manifested over the centuries. Small clues have emerged here and there, like fragments of a puzzle that was never fully assembled. But is all of this just coincidence? Or are we facing something much greater? Some of the first signs appeared as early as the Middle Ages. Between the 14th and 15th centuries, astronomers and scholars began reporting unusual events in the sky, changes that seemed to follow an unknown pattern. Among these reports, certain manuscripts spoke of an age of darkness before the awakening. The problem? None of them explained exactly what that meant. But what happened shortly after? The Black Plague, wars, the collapse of empires. A sequence of events that completely changed the course of humanity. But it didn't stop there. During the 19th century, secret societies began to emerge in Europe and North America, all based on the idea that they possessed forbidden knowledge, something that could never reach the public. Some of these organizations claimed to have access to ancient texts, documents that described historical patterns and events yet to come. Among these predictions, one stood out clearly. When the world is connected by invisible wires, the illusion will be complete. Now stop and think. Today, we live exactly in that scenario. Social networks, instant communication, an uninterrupted flow of information. But what if this connection is not progress, but rather a distraction? If this prophecy is correct, humanity may be living at the peak of the great illusion. And the worst part is, without even realizing it, technology has brought undeniable benefits, but has it also distanced us from something essential? Today, we are surrounded by information, yet fewer and fewer people seem to truly understand what is happening. Isn't it strange that, despite having access to everything, the truth always seems out of reach? And there's one more detail. In 1903, a historian named Charles Leland wrote about an ancient text he found in Italy, something he called the Final Warning. The contents of this document were never fully disclosed, but among the known excerpts, one of them read, "Those who control history will control the future." Shortly after, this document disappeared. And it doesn't stop there. During the 20th century, several events seemed to follow a Puritan script. Wars that began for dubious reasons, financial crises that appeared suddenly and then resolved just as quickly. All of this seems to be part of a pattern. But if this cycle was already known, who is really in control? With every new discovery, a disturbing question arises. Are we simply following humanity's natural path, or is there a greater plan at work? If this prophecy is correct, then what we call destiny may actually be a carefully executed script that has been in play for centuries. And if this theory sounds absurd, just observe one curious detail. Every time a civilization was about to take a giant leap in consciousness, something happened to interrupt this progress. In ancient Rome, an empire that could have revolutionized the world suddenly collapsed. During the Renaissance, when knowledge began to spread rapidly, new wars and religious persecutions arose out of nowhere. Coincidence? Or a strategy to keep the world within a controllable cycle? The signs are everywhere, but those who dare to put the pieces together soon realize that this puzzle is too dangerous to complete. And if all of this is part of a greater plan, the most frightening part isn't what has already happened. What truly matters is what comes next. If this prophecy really predicted past events with accuracy, what does it say about our future? Are we facing an inevitable awakening or a collapse that no one will be able to stop? If this prophecy truly existed and its predictions were correct, then an inevitable question arises. Who knew of its existence? And more importantly, who worked so hard to hide it? Because if history has taught us anything, it is that all forbidden knowledge has its guardians. Not those who protect it for the good of humanity, but those who decide who can and cannot have access to it. It is no secret that secret societies have always operated behind the scenes of major historical events. From the Knights Templar to more contemporary groups, the idea of an elite possessing privileged information has always been present. But what if, among all the hidden truths, this prophecy was one of the most valuable? What would happen if the public had full access to a document that describes exactly how the world is being guided? Many believe that certain groups have always had access to this knowledge. Some theories suggest that the original document was never destroyed, but rather locked away in the Vatican's secret archives, one of the most restricted locations on the planet. For those who don't know, this library contains thousands of historical documents that have never been revealed to the public. Among them, it is said, are forbidden texts, letters that could change what we know about history, and even records of civilizations that never appeared in textbooks. But could this prophecy be hidden there? Others point to a different path. Some researchers claim that this prophecy was recovered and hidden within closed societies, passed down from generation to generation among select groups of the world's elite. The theory suggests that this message was not erased, but rather used as a guide. What if the events predicted in this document were not just happening, but were being carefully orchestrated to come true? This idea might seem absurd at first, but historical records raise some suspicions. In 1938, for example, the archaeologist Otto Rahn, a researcher obsessed with ancient texts and secret societies, was sent on an expedition to find lost documents that could rewrite history. Shortly after, Rahn died under mysterious circumstances, and the records of his research were completely sealed. What did he find? And why have we never been granted access to it? But if this prophecy is so important, has no part of it ever leaked to the public? Some scholars believe that it has, but that it was fragmented and hidden within religious texts, historical documents, and even coded messages embedded in books that went unnoticed for centuries. If true, then the prophecy is still out there, hidden in plain sight. And there's more. Many of the events predicted in this prophecy seem to have one thing in common. Every time humanity is about to make a significant breakthrough, something happens to prevent it. Economic crises appear out of nowhere. Wars begin over seemingly trivial reasons. Promising scientific advancements are discredited and forgotten. Are we being kept within a controlled cycle? If this prophecy still exists, it means that some people know exactly what is coming. And if history has taught us anything, it is that those who control knowledge control the future. But the question is, are they hiding this truth to protect us, or to ensure that the plan continues as expected? And if all of this is real, what does this document say about the coming years? Are we about to witness something so monumental that it will completely change our perception of reality? Or has the decisive moment already passed, and we didn't even notice? If this prophecy truly exists, and if everything we've discussed so far makes sense, then we have reached the most concerning part of this story. Because if it is correct, the decisive moment may have already happened. And worse, without anyone noticing. Think carefully. For centuries, this document has predicted events with terrifying accuracy. Wars, crises, technological advances that have completely changed the course of humanity. But there is an even more intriguing detail. Some ancient translations mention a moment called the point of no return, a milestone in history where choices no longer matter because fate has already been sealed. And if this is true, we may have already crossed that line. Now, what exactly defines this point? The prophecy speaks of three clear signs: a major shift in human behavior, an invisible control over information, and a global rupture that would restructure the world in an irreversible way. The first sign is unsettling. Look around. Human behavior has radically changed in recent years. People are more divided than ever, trapped in endless cycles of distraction and conflict. Have you noticed how everything has become extreme? Critical thinking is disappearing, and in its place, we have an emotionally reactive society where manipulation is easier than ever. Did this happen naturally, or was it induced? The second sign is even more dangerous. The prophecy mentioned that when the world was surrounded by invisible wires, the great illusion would be complete. Now think about it. Never in history have we had so much information available. But at the same time, it has never been harder to know what is actually true. If information is power, then whoever controls that information controls everything. The third and final sign is the most alarming. The prophecy describes an event that would change humanity forever. Some believe it could be a war, others say it will be something related to technology. There are also those who believe that this event has already happened, and no one noticed. It could have been a shift in the global economy, in how societies function, or even something happening right now silently. If this document truly predicted an inevitable cycle of rise and fall of civilizations, then the question is not whether something will happen, but when we will realize that it is already happening. And the scariest part is that everything might be following a script written centuries ago. Now stop and think. Does today's world feel freer or more controlled? Do we have more knowledge or more distractions? Are we on the path of progress or simply following a cycle that was planned long ago? If the prophecy is correct, the point of no return has already been crossed. The question now is not whether something big will happen. It's what comes next. If everything we've discussed so far is correct, then there is one last piece to this puzzle. Because if this prophecy truly predicted an inevitable cycle, then it also left a final warning. One last sign before the conclusion. The question is, has this warning already been given and ignored? For centuries, certain events have been seen as mere coincidences of history. But what if some of them were actually warnings that went unnoticed? Ancient records speak of a strange phenomenon, moments when secrets surfaced unexpectedly, only to be quickly discredited or forgotten. A classic example happened in 1991. A classified report leaked to the press, detailing strategies of social manipulation through technology. At the time, it seemed like science fiction. Today, we know that much of what was written there has already become reality. But what happened to that document? It vanished from the media. No one talks about it anymore. And that wasn't the only time. Some of the greatest discoveries of the 21st century emerged, gained attention for a while, and then disappeared. Theories that questioned reality were ridiculed, crucial information was discredited, and anyone who tried to bring the discussion forward was labeled a conspiracist. Now tell me, since when did questioning reality become dangerous? The prophecy mentioned a very specific pattern. Before the final outcome, humanity would be distracted, too preoccupied to notice what was happening. Something significant could be revealed, but amidst so much information, it would get lost. Has something like this already happened in recent years? If we pay attention, we'll realize that major changes don't happen suddenly. They are introduced gradually, normalized, until one day, the world wakes up and realizes that everything has changed. But when did it start? When did things stop being the way they used to be? And what if this is the final warning? If the prophecy is correct, what happens next can no longer be avoided. The cycle has been completed. The fate has already been written. But there is still one last question. Was this warning ignored because people refused to see it, or because they never had the chance to see the truth? If this prophecy truly existed, and if everything we've discussed so far makes sense, then there's an even more unsettling question. Has it disappeared completely, or is it still in someone's hands? Think about it. Forbidden documents don't just vanish. There is always someone who finds them, who keeps them, who hides them from the rest of the world. And if that's the case, it means that at this very moment, someone may have access to this prophecy. Someone who knows exactly what is coming, and has chosen to keep it a secret. And this wouldn't be the first time something like this has happened. Throughout history, rare books, forbidden manuscripts, and texts considered dangerous have disappeared from official records, only to reappear in private collections, far from public view. In 2012, for example, a medieval manuscript that had been lost for over 500 years resurfaced at a private auction. The buyer? Never identified. This has happened multiple times. And every time a document disappears like this, one question remains. Who has access to this information? And why do they never share it? Now, here's where things get even stranger. In 1998, a former librarian at Cambridge University claimed to have come across an extremely ancient document that described future events with astonishing detail. He said the text seemed to have been written over multiple generations, as if different people had added new predictions over the centuries. Shortly after this interview, all mentions of the subject vanished. The video of the interview was removed, the document's records were never found again, and the librarian disappeared from the media. And it doesn't stop there. In 2007, a private collector reported that a highly valuable manuscript had been stolen from his collection. He never revealed its contents, but described the document as too old to be identified and containing disturbing descriptions of humanity's future. After that, he stopped giving interviews. Coincidences? Or are we looking at a pattern? Now imagine for a moment that this prophecy still exists, locked in a vault, hidden in a secret collection, or stored in an archive no one can access. That would mean that a few select individuals possess knowledge that could change everything. But here's the most important question. Why have they never revealed the truth? Fear? Hidden agendas? Or is it possible that this prophecy contains something so disturbing that the world simply isn't ready to hear it? And what if it's more than that? What if this document wasn't just hidden, but actually used as a guide? Something that doesn't just predict the future, but is being followed to the letter? If this theory is real, then the most terrifying thing isn't what the prophecy says. What really matters now is, will this truth ever be revealed? Or will the last guardian of this secret do what all the others did before him, and take this knowledge to the grave? So far, we have explored the clues suggesting that this prophecy may have existed, the signs that it may be coming true, and the terrifying possibility that someone still has this document in their possession. But if all of this is true, then what comes next? The prophecy spoke of a cycle, something that would repeat throughout history until it reached an irreversible point. And what if we are already living through this final phase? Many global changes happen subtly, as if they are being introduced little by little until one day, we realize that everything around us has already changed. But has this transition already begun without us noticing? Many believe that humanity is going through exactly this transition. Every year, new crises emerge and intensify. Structural changes happen at an ever-increasing speed. Is something being prepared? Or is this part of a natural cycle that has happened before and will happen again? If the prophecy is correct, then the final phase of this process will be marked by a great revelation. Some long-buried truth may come to light. But here's the problem. When this truth is exposed, will anyone still be able to see it? Or will we be so conditioned by the reality imposed on us that we simply ignore what is right in front of our eyes? Some say humanity is awakening. Others believe that, in reality, we have never been further from the truth. But if this prophecy truly foresaw what is happening, then one last question remains. Is there anything that can be done? History shows that, in every collapse, a select few were prepared while the rest of the world continued living as if nothing was happening. Those few were the ones who recognized the signs before it was too late. Now the question is, can you see the signs around you? Or do you still believe that all of this is just a coincidence? History is filled with buried secrets, hidden truths, and messages that were never meant to be read. This prophecy may have been one of them. Its disappearance did not erase the signs. On the contrary, they continue to emerge, scattered throughout time, hidden within events that seem random but may be part of a much larger cycle. If all of this is true, then perhaps we are not merely living history, but rather following a script that was written centuries ago. The question now is not whether this prophecy is right or wrong, but rather, will we ever see the whole puzzle? Or will we continue believing that everything around us is exactly as it should be? This story is just one piece, and one day, perhaps you will see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.